one of the important things that I have been saying in some interviews over the past year is that in order for all of this to stop, the demographics are going to have to change in Congress, in our state houses, both in the governor's seat and in legislatures around the country.
Yeah.
Local school boards, for God's sakes.
Oh, yeah.
We can't we as people of color cannot just go out there and vote. We have to go out there and run.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.
Yeah, and
that's what's happening now. And you see how angry some folks are getting about that.
Yeah.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's okay. So that's interesting. That brings up a couple things for me about like diversity or demographic changes. So to challenge that a little bit, many would say that under Barack Obama's presidency, it's very telling that Black Lives Matter arose under Obama's 2 terms and
Occupy.
And Occupy Wall Street, yeah. So like a lot of people would say that Obama he was still another gatekeeper for the status quo, meaning the interests of white mainstream America. Now, a more nuanced, not to get too deep into this, but like a more nuanced take on that is like, whenever he stepped out of those bounds, like he was slammed. Like that one time, like it was like Henry Louis Gates is
stupidly remarked. Yep.
Yeah, he mentioned that the cop acted stupidly. Slammed by not just the right wing, like even like by white liberals, respectable liberals who would vote for him. So I guess like that's the problem too, because I don't know that the demographics shift is always going to be the solution.
Not always.
Because
no.
And I'll bring this up because at the time that we're taping this on August 8th, 2018, this past weekend there were 2 alt-right kind of neo-Nazi, neo-fascist rallies, the Patriot Prayer in Portland, and then there was another alt-right rally in Berkeley on August 5th.
Actually, also a third one, Providence.
And they got run out like after 20 minutes, right?
Yes.
That was pretty awesome. Yeah, so
I was in the one in Portland.
You were the one in Portland. Now, do you remember, Danielle Outlaw, who's the first African-American chief of police in Portland? Now, again, look this up on your own if you want to, but a lot of footage has shown that, the Proud Boys, the Patriot Prayer people, a lot of these fascist groups, these right-wing fascist groups, were able to march peacefully, and they had police protection. And when counter-protesters showed up, and when I say counter-protesters, it's not just Antifa. It's like a lot of citizens in Portland. They were attacked by the police, basically.
I'm going to explain that one. I'm going to explain. But what I will say about the whole thing about the demographic, it's not 100%.
Yeah, because Danielle Outlaw, the African-American chief of police, is still oh, the cops did a great job.
Yeah, see, bear in mind that some of the Proud Boys and some of the Patriot Prayer folks are of color. I mean, I saw a lot of that.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's not 100%. You're not going to get a good politician that's going to just do everything right. Obama showed that.
Yeah.
But I brought up Occupy because that was what responded to that.
Yeah.
Because Occupy, everybody always wondered, well, what was Occupy really about and all? And it's Occupy was about finding solutions to our socio-political issues without having to go through the corrupt political hierarchy that we have in this country.
Yeah.
We also saw that there was one particular thing that was causing problem, and that was money, i.e. the banks, and we zeroed in on that.
Yeah.
So, and who caused us grief? Who shut us down? The Democrats.
Yeah.
Democratic mayors all over the country shut down Occupy.
Absolutely.
So, so one of the things I will stress is that we do need to change the demographics. The change in demographics is going to help somewhat. I mean, Obama didn't do 100%.
Yeah.
But he did something that whatever he didn't do, that's up to us to fill in the gaps.
Sure. Yeah.
In some fashion, some way or another. But
yeah.
Back to Portland, what happened was the Proud Boys weren't really able to march. We blocked them. There was 200 of them.
Okay.
At the at the waterfront. That's where they were mustered up.
Yeah.
They've been having these little rallies month after month after month, and they didn't come there in the name of free speech. They come there in the name of fighting. They just kept on saying that, and they've been saying it for the past year.
Yeah.
One of their former attendees actually killed someone some time later, and Jeremy Christian.
Yeah.
Stabbed 2 people in the train in Portland.
He's an Oregon guy. That was Patriot Prayer, right? Jeremy Christian.
He's Patriot. Well, they're saying that he wasn't Patriot Prayer. Of course, they're going to say that after he killed someone, but that's another story. But what happened was 200 was a good number for them.
Yeah.
Okay, because I mean, thanks to Alex Jones, they was able to promote their latest rally. So they mustered up over at the waterfront. There was 200 of them. There was 2,000 of us.
Okay.
They did, as far as I know, they did want to march across a nearby bridge.
Yeah.
We were over there, so that probably kept them from doing so.
Okay.
I cannot say that 100%, but I did understand that they wanted to march across the bridge. So they simply went back to where they were standing originally.
Yeah.
The whole thing was basically a shouting match between the two of us.
Okay.
Between the two sides. And calling them out for various things, calling them names. They're calling us names, chanting USA, USA. And I always hate it when USA, USA is being used as an FU to other Americans.
Yeah.
But what happened really is when you started hearing the chants, all cops are bastards, A, C, A, B, and then who do you protect? Who do you serve? When it shifted towards chanting against the police, that's when everything started. Okay. That's when the police started firing the flashbang grenades and started pepper spraying everybody and rushing the crowd. That's when it happened. They tell you that they was trying to protect themselves from projectiles coming from Antifa, but
did you see any of that?
No video. I didn't see any of that, and I was standing right there.
Yeah.
And there was no video showing that happening at all. The first shots were coming from the police. There was some Confederate flags on the so-called Patriot Prayer side.
Yeah.
That kind of like runs afoul of being a patriot.
Right. Of course.
So
very treasonous.
So they had Confederate flag shields. It was coming from an Arkansas-based group called the Highwaymen. They're neo-Confederates. Okay. The spokesperson for the Portland police suggested that the Confederate flags were planted by the anti-fascists.
Right.
They were not.
Yeah, how would that
not.
logistically even happen? Yeah. Like, that's ridiculous. Yeah, like, so why would he... I mean, those folks were armed on that side.
Why would the cops do that in the first place? That's the question. Once cops start doing things like that, you got to start wondering, well, who do you protect? Who do you serve?
Yeah, and so it's sort of, and again, you know, I had some friends in Berkeley who said the same thing, that the cops blocked off counter-protesters. They built a physical wall between the counter-protesters and like the fascist groups that were marching, and they turned on the counter-protesters.
Yeah,
again.
And that's the problem that we've had ever since Charlottesville. I mean, we've had it before, of course.
Yeah.
But when you start, I mean, I saw in the Noonan where basically the rule.
Noonan, Georgia, yes, they turned
Noonan,
on
Georgia.
Yeah.
They kind of sort of did it with the Next American Renaissance Conference this year. There wasn't any fisticuffs or anything like that, but they really fortified the park so that we weren't even able to get to the end, even though it's supposed to be a public place. Yeah. I mean, they basically took the park away from us. I mean, they took the inn away from us. So when that should not have happened.
So okay, so like on that, like how do you? I guess so. As we're taping this is happening before August 12th. Mm-hmm. Now, August 12th is scheduled. What's scheduled for August 12th is the Unite the Right 2 rally, the sequel that no one wanted, except for
not even the white supremacists these days.
Yeah,
either.
exactly. Even they.
Yeah, we need to talk about that one.
First one flopped. So that's going to take place in D.C. Daryle, you are attending this.
Yes, I will be down there. I'm going to go down there on Friday and just to get myself situated for Sunday. It's going to happen on Sunday. And the organizer, Jason Kessler, says that there's going to be about 300-400 of them. Mm-hmm. But if you go online and you listen to what the white supremacists are saying, if you go onto their chats and stuff like that, they're basically warning everybody to stay away from this.
Okay. Yeah.
And so Kessler may have a few people. He may be by himself.
So, I guess, can you share with our viewers when you are going to counter-protest one of these rallies, especially something as prominent as this one? Like, even if like what you're saying is true, that like a lot of white supremacists are trying to back out of it, can you maybe just give a brief overview of how you prepare to be a counter-protester at one of these events?
Well, I will tell you, for me, I'm a reporter. So I'm going there to cover, I'm going to document the Nazis, how many of them there are. That's how we do it. Anti-fascists in general, they basically find out who their legal representation is. They're going to talk amongst their trusted people. They're going to go as a group. They're going to wear protective gear from whatever it is the cops or the fascists are going to do to them. That's pretty much what the deal is.
Yeah.
And but that's the more hardcore Antifa. I mean, you're also going to have folks out there who are just going to be prepared to go out there and oppose the Klan or the fascists or whatever, and they're going to have their signs, they're going to have their banners, and they're going to basically make it clear that we don't want this.
Yeah.
Just like they do anywhere else.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's going to be the kind of drama that we saw in Charlottesville.
Right.
I don't think that the fight is in the Nazis to even come out, let alone oppose us. I don't think D.C. is going to tolerate it.
Yeah.
Especially that close to the White House.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a case where everybody does their thing and then they go home.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So is it like, I guess like for anyone who's interested in protesting, is it just sort of like maybe like reasonably taking care of your, like, you know, maybe having an emergency contact? Is that a good idea?
It's good to have an emergency contact. Usually people like to write it on their arm if ever they get arrested, so that they have it with them regardless of what happens.
Yeah.
And considering how much the police have basically, the lesson that they've taken from Charlottesville is that they got to strong arm us.
Yeah.
So
that was like, I don't know if you saw this it aired last night. It's a Frontline documentary about Charlottesville. It was like Frontline and ProPublica. Yeah, like there's a lot of footage there. I knew this was happening, but they do show a lot of footage in this Frontline documentary about the Charlottesville debacle of cops just like when DeAndre Harris got beaten up, like there were just cops outside of that parking garage.
Yeah, I mean,
just chilling. Like
it's just really sad that that police had a choice: either stand down and let the fascists fight fight Antifa, or they'll do it for them. I mean, one of the things about Portland that really ticked me off is that when the cops started in on us, the fascists were cheering them on.
Yeah.
And that happens each and every time. The fascists cheer them on in Noonan. The fascists cheer them on within the confines of the Park Inn in Nashville. And my attitude has been, look, if the fascists are cheering you on, you're on the wrong side.
Yeah.
You are fighting the wrong people. Unless you're one of them. And then we're right about you bastards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I guess like how do we, I should say, how do we combat that? How do we like with because that's the police, like that's, you know, like these right-wing neo-fascist groups. It's like, you know what they are.
Well, you know what? I think it's basically going back to the whole thing we started this conversation with. I think when we talk about the people who like to call the cops on folks, you start with them. And I don't mean trying to appeal to them or whatever.
Just
Excuse me. Conservatives in this country basically made it clear that they believe that the police are their shock troops.
Yeah.
Conservatives, by their silence from when we're calling, are making it clear that we're getting too close.
Yeah.
Go after those conservatives who are about trying to protect the police at all costs.
Yeah.
They're protecting the police because they think that they are going to allow their agenda to go forward, and that cannot happen.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is you got to get those conservatives out of power. You got to get that right wing out of power.
It is kind of like that James Baldwin sort of perspective of it's really like they're not the source of the problem. They're the symptom. They're doing the bidding.
And I say those right wingers from both parties.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because that's what we're dealing with now too. I mean, I always try. Here's something I've been making a point of, and this is important when it comes to New York, because New York really has a problem with this. We know that Donald Trump's a white supremacist. We know that Donald Trump's a racist, and he has been all his life.
Yeah.
And there is no question about that. We have established that. We know that. He's been a Democrat a lot longer than he's been a Republican.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Democrats allowed that to happen. New York Democrats have a problem with black people. We have seen this over and over and over again. Ask David Jenkins, the problems that we had with Ed Koch back in the day. They always go after black people in the name of law and order, which was foul. Yeah. And when we spoke up, somehow it became anti-Semitism.
Right, yeah.
And that was foul.
So that's a great topic of discussion, the white liberal. I think about this a lot. This Martin Luther King, I'm not going to read the whole quote, but Martin Luther King's, he said, "First, I must confess that over the past few years, I've been gravely disappointed with the white moderate." He talks about like how he doesn't fear, it's like with the Ku Klux Klaner, you know where they stand, but like the white liberals are often in the way. And like I guess like as someone who you've been identified, and it sounds like you wear this label yourself as Antifa.
Yeah.
What can be, so we know like the conservatives, as you outlined, we know what they are, and we kind of actually know how to go at them a bit now. Now, like these white liberals, like what do we do about that? Like the ones that are demeaning Antifa and being like, oh, well, you should find more respectable ways.
We ignore them. We ignore them. I mean, it's pretty much tell them just get the hell out of our way if you don't want to get into this fight. That quote that you got, that was a letter from a Birmingham jail.
Yeah.
And that was in response to a letter that a couple of white clergymen, wrote called A Call for Unity, where they were saying that Martin Luther King was a rabble rouser, and that we should allow our grievances, we should file our grievances within the court system. Well, the court system wasn't working for us back then.
Yeah.
And just like now, this current system as it's structured is not working for us the way it should be. This whole thing where they tell us that we should respect the freedom of speech of Nazis while they disrespect ours for speaking out against them.
Yeah.
Is being pushed back on. I mean, people are getting really sick and tired of just the mainstream liberal, because we do have black liberals that are playing this game too.
Oh, yeah.
And you start looking at some of these folks who call themselves centrists.
Yeah.
And you really recognize them for being right-wing, recognize them for being conservative.
Yeah.
I mean, they just held a conference or a meeting in Ohio, a third way thing, where something called Third Way.
Third Way, okay.
And it was basically those so-called centrists that was trying to come up with a plan to push back against progressives in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and you're right. Like you are seeing that. Like there's a backlash against Ocasio-Cortez. You expect it for the right idiots, the right-wing idiots, but like it's happening. Yeah, a lot of centrist Democrats, a lot of like old school Democrats are like pushing back against her now, and all of her peers.
Oh, I was ticked off about that Wall Street Journal article where they said we are either going to be the party of Ocasio-Cortez or the party of Bloomberg. Bloomberg's not a Democrat.
Yeah. What is it? Just like is it just people just not being that creative? It's like these folks sort of think that like, well, it's like they. I can't tell if they just have a romantic view of like civil discourse, and they think that the other side is respecting that process of civil discourse, and they're just either just ignorant, or they're just uncreative, or they're just like they don't see what's in front of them. They're just in that much delusion. Like, what do you think?
Well, they better get over themselves fast, because at some point the Republicans are gonna pick up on this, and they're gonna realize that they need to kick their bigots to the curb. because they can't keep winning presidential elections on technicalities.
Yeah.
This is the second time in a row that the only reason why they have a president is because of the Electoral College.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, we can keep the Electoral College in place regardless, but they have to look at that. They are not winning the popular vote, which means they're not popular. And they need to change that. And the only way they're going to change that in this day and age, they gotta do more outreach beyond that they are currently reaching out to.
But here's what I wonder about that. Are they really running in fear? Because they seem to push their agenda through.
Yes, they got lucky. They really got lucky.
Well,
with
not just with the presidency, but like even something like net neutrality, like which most of the
they got lucky. They wouldn't be able to do any of this if the Democrats weren't playing their shenanigans.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not all big on major parties to begin with, but the fact of the matter is, the only reason why conservatives in this country have a leg up is because of the conservatives within the Democratic Party. They want to keep fighting and doing this whole back and forth instead of giving us the candidates that we want, that we say that we want.
Is it just job security? Like, is it just sort of like that? They're comfortable, like the Schumer.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's job security. They don't care about the country. They don't care about evolution. They are conservatives. They do not do that.
Yeah.
So they are going to maintain their party. They are loyal to their party. They're not loyal to the people that put them in office. And they know that we notice that.
Yeah.
And they're going to fight that. And that benefits the worst in political society.
Yeah.
Now, this is part of the reason why I brought up the whole thing about the demographics are going to have to change. At least for this, it has to change. Because, excuse me again, if we push back and we start changing the demographics in the Democratic Party and we start winning more and more elections, people of color and such, Republicans are going to freak out. They know that they have to do that too.
Yeah.
And that means they're going to be reaching out to people who would generally vote Democrat. And here's the fun part about that. That means the Republican Party may just become the new liberal party.
Like
or go back to their old liberal ways.
Over this way, yeah.
It switched before, it will switch right back.
Yeah.
The Democrats will become the conservatives, Republicans will become the liberals. That can happen if, mind you, the other political trend doesn't manifest itself, and that's people getting sick of both parties and saying, we're going green, we're going libertarian, we're going independent.
Yeah.
I mean, this is 20 years. November will be 20 years since Jesse Ventura won in Wisconsin. Was it Wisconsin? Minnesota, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and what party was he on again?
He was, I think he was Reform.
Okay.
I think he was Reform, but for all facts and purposes, he was independent, but he was not Democrat or Republican.
Right.
Ever since then, we've been trying to do something to get more control of the political process because the Democrats and Republicans have been holding it hostage. We have tried to, the 2000 election spoke to that. Ralph Nader spoke to that. Mm-hmm. Occupy, Black Lives Matter. Yeah. All of these efforts has spoken to the fact that we got to do something about our political process. The first black president spoke to that.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, a guy who has never held a political office or had any kind of government position in life speaks to that. He sucks.
Oh, yeah.
Tremendously.
Evil. Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, like, yeah, it is actually indicative of people wanting the system's not that we have right now is just not working for anyone. So, like, I guess, like, it is still strange. I mean, look, I'm very much a big advocate of, like, vote for the person who's opposing, like, 2020. Like, I am an advocate of that. Like, I don't, even if I'm not enthusiastic about the candidate, like, but I guess it sounds like, to sort of, like, pull out to a bigger picture of what you're talking about.
Okay.
And like I was saying earlier, I think I sometimes get hung up on, like, the psychology of, like, well, why are people acting like this, and, like, what can we do to change people, you know? And you're kind of talking about, like, okay, it is what it is. Here's how we fight it. I have noticed a trend amongst a lot of people of color, a lot of anyone who's, like, non-cishet white male. And it's something that drives me up the wall, of people being like, oh, white people, white males, I need you to recognize your privilege. I need you to understand, and I need you to I need to know that you understand your privilege. And it drives me up the wall a little bit because I feel like the white males, the sort of status quo people who start to come to that, often something happens to them. Often they feel not like I'm not advocating any retaliation, but often they either go through some sort of a marginalization process, either in class, they come from a lower class background maybe, or they grow up poor and they're marginalized that way, so they relate to other people. But what is it about? Why so and there's also a lot of undoing racism trainings and stuff like that, which I'm sure are fine. I'm sure they're great. Do you notice that trend of a lot of non-straight white males kind of obsessed with converting white people, or is that all in my head?
Well, no, you do see that. You do see that. And let's face it, I mean, we are living in a day and age where we are a more diverse country than we were maybe 50 years ago.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're going to have a generation of white people, a new generation of white people who grew up with that see the effects of generations past still relevant today. And they're trying to implore upon their fellow white people that they need to recognize that you can't do shit like this again the way they used to.
But I notice people of color doing this a lot too.
Well, people of color are warning them.
I hope so, yeah.
That's what that is. People of color are warning them, says, look, I'm going through the door.
Yeah.
Do not block it. Do not call the police as I go through the door.
Right.
If you do, your ass is mine.
Yeah.
That's what that is. White people are trying to convey that in a nicer way.
Okay.
But we had enough.
Welcome to Ace Rodney, the talks for the superstars. Tonight.